This tutorial illustrates using DynamicPDF Designer to create a simple document consisting of a single page. Usually you'd create a report and add a cover page to that report. But to keep it simple, we're going to start here with just a single page in this tutorial. Don't worry, in future tutorials you'll create reports, subreports, and work with a lot of the features that Designer can do. The DynamicPDF Cloud API is a set of REST endpoints for creating and modifying PDF documents. You can also use it to get metadata about those documents. It's easy to use, it's efficient and scalable, globally available, and secure. Key features include an online document report designer, merging, stamping, and adding barcodes to PDFs, form-filling PDFs and retrieving form-filled information, converting images to PDF, encrypting and securing PDFs, retrieving text, XMP, and other information. We also have an online tool called Designer that makes creating PDF documents from a report template easy and straightforward. And you can call our REST APIs directly using your own client API or a tool like curl, or you can select one of our client APIs that make calling the REST endpoint easier. We have one in C#, Java, Node.js, and PHP. Get up and running quickly using the DynamicPDF Cloud API. Our online designer, the REST APIs, and client libraries make it easy to add PDF capabilities to your applications. Let's go to the tutorial. Go to Docs, Tutorials, Designer, Creating a Page. Let's scroll down and look at the required resources. Before beginning this tutorial, you must add the Creating-Page-Designer Samples folder to your cloud storage in the Resource Manager. So let's go ahead and get the required resources. First, we need to log in. And if you don't have an account, you can sign up for one here, but we're going to assume you already have an account. And log in to the Environment Manager. Open the Resource Manager. Now click Add Samples button. Check the Creating Page Designer project to add the folder containing the resources that you're going to need in this tutorial. Okay. And it adds the samples. Let's go ahead and look at it. You see we have a coffee.jpg, creating page.dlex, and creating page.json. Now, if you're just going to follow along, go ahead and leave the DLEX and the JSON file there. However, I'm going to assume that you're going to start from scratch and follow this tutorial from scratch. So first, we're going to go ahead and delete the DLEX and the JSON. So right-click on the DLEX file, delete, and that deletes that file. Now do the same for the JSON file. Okay, now let's close the Resource Manager. Now let's create a cover page containing an image, a line, and some top-level JSON data elements. Open DynamicPDF Designer from the Environment Manager. And it opens Designer with displaying just a file explorer. That's because we haven't created our DLEX file yet. Assign the name Creating Page for the DLEX file. And it adds an empty DLEX file to Designer. Before we do anything else, let's add the JSON data that we're going to use for this application. So select the Layout Data Editor, and that opens a blank Layout Data Editor. And I'm just going to copy and paste the JSON data. And you can see here we have the report name, date, author, and then we have an array of coffees. Now this array we're not going to use in this tutorial. This is actually the report data. So now let's save it and save it as creating a page. Now let me show you something really quick before we continue. Go ahead and close Designer. That takes us back to the Environment Manager. Now select Manage Resources, go to Creating a Page Designer folder, and there's our three resources. Now notice that they both have the same name, Creating-Page. When you do that, and you double click on DLEX to open it, Designer knows that that JSON data set, because it has the same name, should also be loaded as it loads the DLEX file. So let's go ahead and double click on the DLEX file, and it loads the JSON data. We don't have a page at this point, so let's add a page. Go to the Add Page button and click Add Page, and that creates a new page. Now up at the right, you'll see the Document Explorer, and it just has the ID as page 1. So let's change the ID to something a little more meaningful. Let's change it to cover_page. Notice that it assigns the ID of cover page, and it displays it up there in the Document Explorer. In a small tutorial like this, it's not so important that you go ahead and assign everything an ID, but in a larger, more complex DLEX layout, you'd probably want to assign IDs to your elements. Now let's add the image coffees.jpg to the page. So right-click anywhere in the page and a context menu appears. From that context menu, select Add Image. Okay, we don't have the image yet. Before we get the image, let's change the ID to coffee_image. Now, if you look down a little bit below that, you'll see resource, and then in there, you'll see a dynamic path. We're not going to use a dynamic path. You can assign dynamic paths to images and then the path. So we want to select the path. So click on the 3 dots in the path, and it opens the File Explorer. So from Creating a Page Designer, select coffee.jpg, select, and it adds it to the image to the page. So now let's resize it, the height and the width. The height is 200 and the width is 154. Okay, let's go ahead and center it a little bit better. Okay, so now let's add a line just below the image. Right-click to display the context menu, select Add Line, and a line appears. Move the line so it's just below the image and centered. But in this tutorial, we're not going to spend too much time trying to get the exact layout. Now that we've added a line, let's add the title to the report. Right-click, select Add Record Box, and a new record box control appears. Let's center it. One little trick I like to do is you can resize the control to take the entire width of the page. So that sort of guarantees you're going to get pretty close to centering it. Make sure we have it center aligned. Go back up to the record box properties pane. Scroll down a little, and there in the data name property, assign it report name. Now let's resize it. Now let's change the font because it's a title. We want to make it a little bit bigger. So let's make the font size 22. And now let's go ahead and resize this record box. Click the little green arrow Run button, and it generates a PDF. And there you go. We have the image, the line, and the title. The watermark is just because I'm using a free subscription. If you have a paid subscription, obviously this watermark will not appear. Let's return to Designer, and let's add a date just below the report name. So the report's date. We're going to add it a different way this time. Instead, go over to Data Explorer, click on date and hold it, and drag it just under the report name. And it adds the record box with the date. And let's see, what do we want to do next? Let's go ahead and run it again. And there you go. You see we have the image, the line, the title, and just below it is the date. Return to Designer. Now add the author name to the report, only we're going to do it a little bit differently. While we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and assign an ID to the record box. So let's name it report_name for the ID for the report name. And for the date, let's assign it report_date. Now let's add the author to the cover page. We're going to add a record area. So right-click anywhere in the page. From the context menu, select Add Record Area. Go ahead and center it. And over here in the properties, in the record area properties, you'll see text, a text field. Enter the text, prepared by # author pound. DLEX reports use Cold Fusion style syntax for embedded fields like this. So you do a pound, the field name, and pound, and that'll embed it in the record area. Let's resize the control, the record area control, and make sure it's centered. Now let's change the font. Let's go ahead and make it italicized. So Helvetica oblique, and that italicizes the text. Run the report, and there you go. We have the image, the line, the title, date, and prepared by John Doe. Resize the report just to see the entire report. And that's one way you would use Designer to create a cover page for a report. In the next tutorial, we're actually going to create a report with repeating data. And we will reuse this cover page. Now, underlying a DLEX file is an XML file. We can review that by going up here and selecting View DLEX Source. And that displays the DLEX source view. Notice that a DLEX document is nothing more than an XML page. We have the page, we have the image, line, 2 record boxes, and a record area. The DLEX source view in Designer is read-only, but you could always download the DLEX file, edit it using your favorite text or XML editor, and then upload it again. Okay, let's close the DLEX source view. And now let's review what we've done here. First, we created a cover page. Then we created our JSON dataset. Then we added an image. We set the image's ID. We set its dimensions. We added a line. We added a record box that contains the record name JSON field. Then we added the report's date, assigned its ID as a report_date. Then we added a record area that contains the report's author. And we viewed the created DLEX XML. And then we generated the PDF report. So as you can see, using the DynamicPDF Cloud API's online designer is easy and straightforward. In the next tutorial, we'll add some report data and we'll have a cover page and a report. I'm James, developer evangelist at DynamicPDF, reminding you, when you think PDF, think DynamicPDF Cloud API. See you next time.